Witness me, smegma crazies, and welcome back to Mad Max. Unless you enjoy seeing more camps taken down, then, well, that's pretty much all that's going to be happening in this video. Same as ever. I still want to get Jeet's territory down to threat level 1 so I can unlock the next, well, unlock some harpoon upgrades. But past that, I mean, it's just going to take some time. And this is why I said this game is sort of overstuffed with content, because there's 3 areas that have just about this same amount of detail and, well, extra stuff to do in them. And I mean, we haven't even really gone through the minefields yet, and that's that's a joy.
Avert your deadly stare, Walker. You do not want my hide. No, you want to kill the suckling swine of Scrotus's hordes. They have a camp on the edge of Outer Graves. You alone might be worth the massacre. But see to it that the war crier is muffled, or he'll pump them all up with his damn yells. Huh. If you feel nimble, there's a dangerous hidden pathway which might give you a bit of an edge in the carnage.
She's not wrong that there is a hidden pathway, but it's not really very useful.
Easy pickings.
There's not really a whole lot to see or do here. I mean, I don't remember coming here before, but there's not really much in the way of defenses at all. It's kind of weird. I mean, I even just drive up at the front gate and they open it. Which is something I've never seen happen before. So, you know.
I'm crying! Your song will be the so, see? Where are we headed?
South.
I've gotten close enough to the Jeet's mission to get the armory and Gutgash's stronghold, which is why they had that little conversation about the yelly, smelly, or saltpeter. But we'll be getting there eventually. I figure I could take this time to talk about the first movie, Mad Max 1. You know, it's been maybe a few months since I watched it, but it basically bears almost nothing in common with the rest of the movies. Aside from, you know, Mel Gibson being Mad Max, and honestly, even he's kind of unrecognizable in the role. It does not look like Mad Max at all. Or it doesn't look like Mel Gibson. He was very young at the time. Mad Max 1 came out in, I want to say, 1977? And, basically, at the time, I want to say that George Miller was working, at least some of the time, as a... he was involved in some clinics where they would have these high-speed road crashes, and a lot of the carnage you see in the movie is inspired by that, as his time in those collision trauma centers. So, Mad Max 1, both story-wise, character-wise, and honestly the feeling of it, doesn't bear a lot in common with the rest of the movies. The world is still post, well, it hasn't quite gone straight to hell yet, but it's definitely past the tipping point. Water's becoming more scarce, people are going crazy, but it's not like you have the endless dunes that you find in The Road Warrior onwards. At the start of the movie, you still have Max acting as a patrol officer with Australia's Main Force Patrol. Essentially a group of people keeping the highways safe for the average person. Since, you know, there are still crazy drivers, motorcycle gangs, all that sort of mess, because what else would you have in the post-apocalypse? The movie starts out with 2 members of the Main Force Patrol trying to track down, or trying to chase down a dangerous driver known as the Knight Rider. And actually, the two of them that start out, I don't remember their names off the top of my head, but they do make a cameo appearance inside the Fury Road comic book series. And they are actually picking on the People Eater before he becomes the People Eater. In the movie Fury Road, People Eater was the Lord of Gastown. But you know, they don't really do so well. The Knight Rider, he's kind of definitely above what they are capable of fighting. Meanwhile, during this chase scene, you'll often see some cuts to Max, who is working on souping up his vehicle. It's not quite the iconic V8 yet, but we'll get there. Anyway, eventually they all wreck, and sometimes, you know, civilians get hit, you know, in the course of chasing. These things happen. But the Knight Rider is very much beyond what everybody else can handle. So, enter Max, who enters in a game of chicken with the Knight Rider, and while Max doesn't flinch, the Knight Rider does. And although he's been going on crowing about he's immortal up to this point, losing that game of chicken seems to have broken him. And eventually, he loses his focus enough that he crashes into a fuel tanker and causes a large explosion. As you do. So, Max obviously has some problems with this, but he goes home to see his wife and child, his son. And, you know, they have a nice night together to try and recuperate. Meanwhile, Max goes in the morning to his main force patrol supervisor, who they show him a brand new V8. One of the last ones they can find, as a way of trying to keep Max on the force, because, you know, giving a man something nice and shiny will probably keep him around for a bit. Meanwhile, another biker gang descends on the town where the Knight Rider passed away to pick up his remains. They had respected the Knight Rider, and they were part of his, the Knight Rider was part of their crew, I believe. The leader of the gang is known as Toe Cutter, and he's kind of brutal. Meanwhile, Toe Cutter has also got a younger member of the crew under his wing, trying to beef him up to full-time status, and this crew member is known as Johnny the Boy. He'll come up again later, of course he will. So while they're trying to recover the remains of the Knight Rider, everything kind of goes badly. They chase down they start picking on some of the townsfolk. But what really sets everything over the top is one young couple takes off in their nice little hot rod, but unfortunately they get overtaken by the biker gang for fun and run off the road, beaten to hell and back. And it all happens off camera, but the implication is that both members of the couple, male and female, are probably raped at some point. So there is a brief scene where they call in the wreck being off the side of the road. I want to say it's Max pulls up and sees the lady running off into the field, or maybe she's unconscious in the car, and the male of the couple is running off into the field with his pants down around his ankles. You know, probably scared out of his wits. And lying next to the car in a state of bliss, drugged out incompetence, incoherence, is Johnny the Boy. He's not playing nicely with the main force patrol, so they take him into the jail. Naturally, Toe Cutter didn't take nicely to this, and they go by and pick him up, because at the end of the day, they just don't have enough evidence to prosecute. The couple is not willing to pursue any damages, possibly because, well, threats or something like that. And so they have no choice but to let Johnny go. Max obviously takes some umbrage against this. It may not have been Max. It may have been his one of his patrol partners. I'm afraid I don't remember his name. It's been a few months, and honestly, the movie does not. It doesn't set a large. A lot of the characters aren't quite as outsized. A lot of the main Force Patrol characters just kind of exist in a void. the only characters I can really recall with any clarity are Max's boss, Max, Toe Cutter, and Johnny the Boy. But maybe that's because, you know, the movie's more focused on them. Normally I've been cutting out these loading screens, but I guess I missed this one. Sometimes they'll give you tips, give you little nice peeks that you can get in the photo mode. The game does have a photo mode, and I've taken a few shots. They look pretty neat. But yeah, Mad Max 1 does not have the distinct character that every other movie has had. So, if I'm a little fuzzy on the names, I apologize. But honestly, I can still definitely recommend watching Mad Max 1. It's an experience to see where everything came from, if nothing else. I think it's interesting. The other movies are definitely more interesting and more well put together as far as, you know, actual movies go. But I still think it's interesting to see where everything came from.
Well done, well done. Now we'll see what treasures lie inside.
Sometimes you'll find these car wrecks that you can harpoon out of the ground. They don't usually have a whole lot, but there's challenges for it, so sometimes you need to do it. So anyway, Max's friend, I'll remember his name eventually, it'll probably come back to me, was probably the one who pulled in Johnny, and Johnny wants some revenge. And of course, Toe Cutter wants to push him over the edge to get his revenge. Because after all, you can't be a member of the Cool Kids Club unless you go all in on your murder. So they trash his motorcycle, and then while he's driving a borrowed tow truck, they run him off the road and throw Molotov cocktails at him, which is, you know, a plus since he's got oil and fuel all over him. This puts Max's friend in the hospital, which, again, George Miller's experience as in the trauma center coming to the fore. You get some nice images of this guy being in a full body cast, completely burned head to toe. It's not the best. So Max sees this and he goes and talks to his superior and basically tells him, this isn't going well for me. If I have to stay out there on the road any longer, I might become just as mad as they are. So his boss tells him, you know what, take a break. Take a few days off, go see the coast, just relax. Come back and we'll address it again then. Because obviously they don't want to lose their star pursuit. Or their star chaser? Driver? We'll go with that one. So, Max does as he says. Goes out, takes the family out to takes his wife and kid out to a farm out in, you know, where things are still green. There's still some greenery around. There is a member of the family, I want to say it's an aunt of one of them. And, you know, they're relaxing. They're having a good time. They go to the beach. They get some ice cream, except that, you know, while they're fixing up the van, there seems to be the mechanic who's fixing it up may be involved with the motorcycle group for some reason. And also when they go and get the ice cream, Max's wife is forced to fight off some of the bikers from the gang. But, you know, otherwise having a good time. Except that when they're out in the woods, they're getting chased a little bit. Basically things go badly at a certain point. The bikers eventually chase Max's wife and kid back to the farm, while Max is out, he's out driving, investigating something that, they found a body in the woods, and while Max is looking at the body, they chase the rest of them back to the farm. You know, because they got distracted. But, long story short, Toe Cutter and the rest of his gang run down Max's wife and kid in the middle of the road, and Max unfortunately can't do anything about it. This sets something of a, well, it sets Max off, you could say, and unfortunately he's gone mad. Max has gone mad. He's some sort of Mad Max, if you will. That's the title drop. Anyway, Max suits up in his black leather jacket and his black gloves and his entire getup, slots in his sawed-off shotgun. He takes the V8 Interceptor, the black on black, from the police station without particularly asking anybody, and now he's out on his quest for revenge. He chases down Toe Cutter and Johnny the Boy and everybody else, and while he's chasing them down, he runs a few of them off the road, and eventually he gets them knocked off motorcycles, and they have a bit of a gunfight. Max gets shot in the leg, while everybody else gets more or less shot, except for Johnny the Boy, who's managed to escape. In fact, if you notice on Max's character model in this game, he's actually wearing a leg brace. And I want to say that leg brace actually exists in most incarnations of Max. That is the nod to the injury he sustains in Mad Max 1. Still, Max, not to be denied on his revenge, tracks down Johnny the Boy, who has seemingly run another guy off the road and killed him for his boots. Only he's once again lying incoherently next to the wreckage, much as he was found earlier in the film. So, Max is able to walk up quite easily, handcuff him to the vehicle, and, as there's some leaking kerosene, he gives Johnny the Boy two options. He places a lighter he got from his friend next to the kerosene, and eventually the kerosene, petrol, fuel, gasoline. And eventually, the lighter will set off the fuel, and there will be a nice big explosion. On the other hand, he gives Johnny a rusty hacksaw. Pretty dull as well. That scarecrow is still a little too strong to pull down with our harpoon, but I'll address that pretty soon. Anyway, he gives a hacksaw to Johnny and says you got two options. You can saw through your leg, or, well, you know, I've given you a chance. There's no real resolution at this point either. We're left, and eventually the car behind Max explodes, but he just kind of drives off into the sunset. He doesn't return to main force patrol, he doesn't... That's just kind of the end of the movie.
Well, you take care of business.
Dune Drifter, we know of your deeds here. We smelly, dirty, unaffiliated sandbugs know you somehow got reason to mess with Warlord Scrotus caca. Accept our praise and hear me now. That big camp, they call it Submarine. It's big time important to the Warlord. If you're looking to attack it, there's two entrances inside. Beware their belter, though. When he starts yelling, they all mad.
On its individual merits, I can't very strongly recommend Mad Max 1. It's an interesting movie mostly because of the... I think mostly because of the legacy that it inspired. The Road Warrior, Mad Max 2, is a much more iconic vision of what they were trying to do. And honestly, that movie's still considered one of the best. That movie's still very inspirational for a lot of the Wasteland stuff you'll see. But Mad Max 1 is sort of an odd duck. It did well with the critics at the time, but you know, obviously looking at it from today's movie making standards, it's an odd one, especially because the legacy it inspires is so different from everything else. Still, if you're a fan of Mad Max in general, I could definitely recommend watching it. If nothing else, than to see where everything came from. This camp has an entrance at either side of this large area. You see the two ramps here. There's one ramp on the other side, I want to say. Much as I appreciate that every bit of gasoline ever in this universe tends to explode, I also appreciate that anybody caught near an explosion tends to immediately disappear into giblets. I don't really know where all these guys came from, but I'm glad they came to me rather than me having to come to them. Makes life easier.
Becomes very difficult. What's happening?
Sometimes you can catch multiple enemies with a shotgun blast, which will obviously kill all of them with a single blast. You usually can't catch more than 2, maybe 3. But still, any additional kills are still better than no kills. The other reason I find Mad Max 1 interesting is because it's the only seemingly consistent facet of Max's backstory that's ever addressed in any of the movies, or the game. Obviously, at some point, Max had a wife and child in the past, and something happened to them. It's not really specified what happened in either The Road Warrior or in Beyond Thunderdome, because they don't really come up. But it becomes a factor again in Fury Road, and in this game. They seem to focus more on it being a wife and daughter in the game and in Fury Road. But even so, it almost contributes to Max's status as almost a wasteland legend. One of those things that people talk around the fire at night about the Raggedy Man and this man who came to right the wrongs. And it could be in the entire Wasteland lore, Max isn't even a real person, but rather a legend who comes along when things have gotten particularly bad to different areas. It's an interesting bit of world lore, really, that has kind of developed. I don't know if it is specifically acknowledged anywhere as that way, but I like the concept that Max is maybe more of a abstract concept than he is a real person in the Wasteland. The only real constant about his character is that he had a wife and child. He was part of some sort of organized force, maybe the police force, maybe the military. Beyond that, he's just a hyper-competent survivor. Well, and he drives really well. All in all, it's the only sort of world building you can get over a long period of time. It's not even something that you necessarily focus on as far as world building goes, it just kind of develops. Especially with the large gap there was between movies like, between Beyond Thunderdome and Fury Road. It was about, 20 years? More than that for things to happen.
I like your work, driver. Keep it up and we're good. Some of them big guns say there's a big cheat for a prize in gas.
Still, I find it interesting to think of Max that way, as not even a specific person, but more of a legend, really. Those are nice spikes. We haven't really encountered any border vehicles yet, but if somebody tries to jump onto our car, they're going to have a much tougher time. So the survey crew is an interesting piece of, interesting bit for your wasteland. Essentially what it does is every single scavenging location on the map for a given area will now appear on the map, rather than you having to drive by it and see it. Which means, if you have any intention of driving around and collecting every single bit of scrap, the survey crew will be useful for you. And in fact, I will be doing that, but off camera, because just watching me drive around for 2.5 hours is already been boring enough, and I need to add another 2.5 on top of it. But I'll be doing that off camera, and the interesting parts I'll put in somewhat of a clip show. We'll be seeing that soon, but until next time, stay thirsty.